Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Henni Pajunen, a doctoral researcher from the University of Turku, Finland. And I'm here to talk to you about maintaining and challenging the standard, grassroots online public language policing as a biopower in Finnish language discussion groups. And today's talk is based on my doctoral research on its second article, and here's a quick look into the contents. I will first go through a theoretical background on language policing and biopower, and then go to the actual study, so data, methods, and most interestingly, the results, and end in a few conclusions. So, many must have encountered some kind of metalinguistic commentary or a discourse online where particular ways of using language are commented on. It can be humorous, corrective, or insulting. And this is the phenomenon that I'm interested in and studying. And namely, this sort of regulatory process that it includes. So language policing, very simply put, is a regulatory process regarding language. It is the production of order, usually normatively organized and policed. Dia has disappeared. But traditionally, this is an institution-led and ordinated by law, meaning that it's done by academic institutions and state organizations. And usually, these policies include various mechanisms and techniques that monitor, control, and regulate language use. And as many things regarding language are, this is also language ideologically motivated. And in standard language cultures, this tends to be the standard language ideology. Should I stop or can we go on?
No.
I can talk and you can see the slides later.
We can see the slides
okay,
shortly.
I will move on. All right.
Yes.
So this sort of exclusive power of these institutions, these institutional actors, has been challenged by mainly on critique on language policy and language ideological research. And this idea that this is not only a top-down or overt-covert mechanism, but instead is practiced by multiple actors and in different non-traditional domains. And here, power in the context of language is then widely distributed and consistently reproduced. The question here is then, how do we examine these forms of systems of power, where we don't have like a clear figurehead who has the power or clear groups who hold the power? How do we examine and study this? And to this, we can offer an alternative lens, which is a Michel Foucault's theory of biopower. And this is an opposition to this traditional view of power, where we have a sovereignty, a figurehead, a group that holds the power. And here, biopower operates through surveillance, discipline, and normalization. Its goals are the positive intervention, control, and regulation of human life, all aspects of human life, the human body, the human behavior, the human social life. And importantly, this works through norms, which are then used to appraise and measure life and behavior. How well something follows the norms is normal, and if it differs from this norm, it is abnormal. And Foucault gives us sort of two ways of norm production. First is this kind of normation, which is the disciplinary technique that enforces already existing norms. And the second one is normalization, where the norm is established by studying the normal curves of society. So we look at what is normal, and from that we pick the norm. And as we start to normalize and internalize these norms, we start to follow them automatically ourselves, but we also start to see how others follow these. We surveil how others are following these norms. And by this way, biopower becomes a universal surveillance system of sorts, where regular people regulate each other. And this way, these power structures have become less visible and harder to pinpoint. But moving on, maybe you can see the slides already. No. But in modern life, we have different forms of norm enforcement, and one such is internet. And internet and social media have become tools and platforms for this kind of regulation. We tend to think of the internet as the Wild West with no laws, but norms are the primary social control mechanism online. They, of course, vary depending on where on the internet we are. And namely, internet and social media have changed the way norms are regulated, mainly that they have removed any limitations around them. And this way, online spaces can be used to leverage biopower over others. We track behavior, we punish behavior that differs from the norm, and we appraise good behavior. And when the target of this kind of regulation is language, we can talk about online public language policing. So this is not a new unstudied phenomenon. It has been studied in different languages and different cultures. For example, prior studies have examined grammar Nazi Facebook groups or Jodel messages or language forum threads. And a common finding in these studies is the focus on standard language and dominant language ideologies, meaning that these offline language norms are still upheld in these online spaces. And this way, language policing is a way to put these language ideological beliefs into practice in a very practical way. Quickly on standard Finnish and its ideologies, similarly to Western standard languages, Finnish, of course, standard Finnish carries symbolic capital, has economic and social rewards, and serves as a marker of social bonds. Although the current language policies and language planning tends to turn towards destandardization, for example, more variation has been accepted into the standard, standard Finnish still has a very strong presence in the public life. And the dominant underlying ideologies here are, of course, standard language ideology, monolingualism, and in some cases, linguistic purism. But moving on to the actual study. Oh, finally. My interest is in this phenomenon that had not been studied in Finnish prior. So mainly my interest was threefold. Firstly, what and whose language is policed? What kind of practices does this language policing use? And what language ideologies does it promote? So a threefold question. And data was collected from 3 public Facebook groups dedicated to Finnish linguistic problems. Facebook is an easy platform to collect data from, why it was picked. And all these groups were over a decade old and had tens of thousands of members, so very active groups. And data was collected between December 2022 and February 2023. And it includes 150 Facebook posts and their comments, which are a many. And usually this kind of post that was collected had a picture or a screenshot of some kind of norm deviation language and some commentary from the poster on why it was wrong or some kind of other comment. And the data was anonymized after collection. And the method pick was a theory-driven content analysis, and I used as a categorization, we lost it, Murmaa, Mengelän, Moolis shaming categorization, which has 5 categories: denunciatory, pedagogic, recreational, participative, and reflective. And I will go deeper into these when we get to the analysis part. But after my own analysis, I added a 6th category into this. And this is a good tool to examine how people take different roles in these kind of online discussions. But to the results. So a question was what and whose language is policed? And interestingly, most of the language policing focused on standard language, standard Finnish, and very rarely on other forms, for example, spoken language or jargon. And it mostly targets public language, so language we can see in the public sphere, for example, news, advertisements, signs, or announcements. And the targets of this kind of policing were rarely private people. They were mostly organizations, institutions, newspapers, or job titles, for example, the journalist, the teacher, the advertiser. And if we can see, maybe we had an example of here, but I can return to it later if it returns. And most of these policed perceived norm deviations were related to normal kind of language problems, so orthography, word choice, sentence structure, and so forth. And the reason why I use the word perceived norm deviations is because in 1/3 of the post, the police language did not violate the codified norms. So this means that some of this policing leans towards hypercorrectness and personal interpretations of standard Finnish. For example, maybe the language police remembered the norm wrong, or the norm had changed after they learned it. And here's a quick quantitative look into the actual categories. Can be divided into 2 groups. So we have ones that support dominant language ideologies and ones that challenge them. And here we can clearly see that the first 4, denunciatory, pedagogic, recreational, and participative, support dominant language ideologies and are most of the comments and all of the posts. However, reflecting and normalizing came up only in the comments and quite rarely. And I will now go through each category and give you some examples from each kind of category. So, first one we have denunciatory language policing, which was very simply put informal language shaming. So, the put down of others' language use. And these usually included denouncements of perceived norm deviations, mockery, and insults. A common tactic was this kind of naming and shaming. So, a commenter named a newspaper that had published a mistake and then shamed them for it. And here, this biopower exercise takes a very punitive and disciplinary form, as we can see in these examples. So here are posts and comments from the data, and you can see the English translation above and below it the Finnish original form. And we can see that they are moved from annoyance to very hostile tones at times. And the second group, we have pedagogical language policing. This had a very instructive and educational approach. These usually included like metalinguistic comments that commented on why a norm deviation should be changed and how. They usually included exposed correction, so the commenter simply gave the correct form without question. And this kind of exposed correction leaves no room for dialogue. So the correct form is simply given and it is accepted as such. So it itself carries this standard's abstract authority. However, the instances of hypercorrection show that sometimes the ideal of standard Finnish is more important than the actual skill in it. And here are some examples from the data. In the first one, we have a commenter that gives a metalinguistic comment where they explain why a certain form is wrong and give a correction into it. And the second two are simply exposed corrections. So they are simply given a correct form, for example, with an asterisk. And moving on to recreational language policing. And this was mostly for entertainment purposes. And as we saw earlier, most of the comments were recreational. So a lot of humorous posting. And this usually consists of comments and posts that ridicule, laugh at, or joke at perceived norm deviations. And the most common humor techniques in the data were absurdity and puns, which are based on the incongruity theory, where the humor comes from the unexpected. And other common human techniques were irony, repetition, and ridicule, which are based on the superiority theory, where the fun comes from seeing others being wrong. And here, humor acts as a social corrective with a very disciplinary function. We are laughing at you, we are not laughing with you. And, oh no, you can't see it. But here are a few examples from the data. Now I lost the slides as well. No problem.
Actually, all the slides were visible to online participants, but now...
Could I see some slides then maybe?
Now you can...
I can follow these here. Oh, they came back. All right. So here are a few examples of the data. And the second one is an example of repetition, where, for example, this is a comment under a post that had a picture of a sign that had one word that for some reason had a space in the middle of it where a space should not be. So the commenters started repeating this mistake in their own comments, so playing into the joke more. Yes, and participative language policing. And this was a very positive part of these language policing activities. It was characterized by social participation. For example, commenters asked for help from the other group members. They told their own experiences and on funny perceived non-deviations and thanked others for good finds. And although this is not active language policing, it's still a sort of participation in the group activities, possibly motivated by a desire to listen in or stay updated in the matters. And this was a curious case of utilizing the community knowledge. So commenters would ask for help from other peers to check that they themselves were correct in their own questions, which can be seen here in the questions. Who thinks that there is something wrong with the text? What do your group members think? So checking that they themselves are not incorrect. And the last one is a funny comment on their own experience. And moving on to the language policing that does not support dominant language ideologies. So reflective language policing challenges dominant language ideologies in the data, namely by questioning the group's understandings of standard Finnish and its monolithic nature. And it used positioning as a tool in this matter by instead of treating these norm deviations as signs of linguistic incompetence, like mistakes, they were treated as something that was caused by affordance-based reasons, like it happened because someone was in a hurry, or it was typing on a phone, which is very difficult sometimes. It was also used to portray these language policers in a negative light, as overly zealous, for example, which can be seen in these examples. You're offended by something so small. I do a lot of tapping on a small phone. It's just one letter typo. So trivializing these sort of norm deviations. And the last category here is normalizing language policing. And this most clearly challenges the dominant language ideologies because it admired and accepted these norm deviations. It celebrated stylistic and structural nonconformity by praising, for example, innovative wordplay that's not part of this standard register, and defended, for example, deviations that are based on the spoken language. And by painting these norm deviations in a good and acceptive and positive light, norms themselves become sort of these restrictions on good and creative language use. For example, I think they were going for a fun play on words, and they succeeded. Good language version sounds pleasant to the ear. Well, no matter, there is nothing you can understand. So as long as language looks good, sounds good, and works, these deviations are inconsequential. So, going to a few conclusions. Seemingly, these mundane interactions online do have a way of maintaining standard Finnish norms by surveillance and norm negotiation. And although most policing in the data, in my case, does reinforce codified norms and dominant language ideologies, remember denunciatory, pedagogic, recreational, participative, language policing can also be used to challenge these sort of dominant chances by accepting or legitimizing these norm deviations. And I would think that the examined online public language policing in my data aligns more with community sort of empowerment instead of digilantism, so digital vigilantism, by upholding these collective norms instead of shaming or going after individuals. And the last point here is more of a question. So what is this potential social impact of these habitualized online practices in offline realities? Meaning that these group members already examine the linguistic landscape with a critical eye. They are looking for norm deviations. They are taking pictures of these deviations. They are posting them online. They are participating in this commentary online that often shames or corrects or laughs at these deviations. Has this somehow changed the way they themselves use language in the public sphere? And I will leave this as an open question to you. But thank you. In case you're interested further, you can find my article published here, and of course, a few references.
Thank you for your talk. Let's open the floor for the discussion. Yes, we have one question or comment. Yes.
Thank you so much. That's really fascinating talk and topic, and thank you. I have a couple of questions actually, but well, I try to be fast. First, do you have in Finnish any special name for people who like this language police? Because in Russian they are called grammar Nazi. And another thing is, how often do you see, not in the specific group, but in external Facebook, just in regular exchange about something that this norm deviation is used to attack someone else, when people use it as an argument, first learn how to write and then express your opinion on it, because again that's a huge thing in Russian-speaking media. And the third question is, I understood that it's mostly about these like official or more public language use, but is it only for language use of native speakers, or also they attack non-native speakers? Again, because I quite often can see when people laugh at I don't know, price tags on market made by non-native speakers and different mistakes in spelling and so on. Thank you so much.
Yes, if I remember your questions correctly. So we of course have pilkunnussia is one word. I will not translate it. It's one word for this kind of person who's very particular about grammar. And I actually had to come up with a Finnish word for this when I translated this into a more Finnish article, kielen tarkkailija, so someone who observes language for this one. And of course, you have a version of Grammar Nazi as well. So these are sort of Finnish versions for here. And my experience is that, especially in public language, if there are language mistakes, it can often come up in the comments, and it can be used against, for example, the writer itself as a sign of poor education or somehow bad professionalism. And secondly, in the data, or thirdly, in the data, I only had 2 posts that were clearly done by a, for example, second language learner. And interestingly, the commenters turned against this person that had shamed this person for writing bad Finnish, so to speak. So there was this like mirror effect where usually the comment was that they are learning, they are already trying enough. Instead of like native speakers were treated more harshly because they should know better. They have gotten a good education and training in this, so why are you making grammar mistakes? And hope I answered all your questions.
Yeah. Any questions or comments more?
I'm also interested in learning, has anyone participated in language policing? Offline or online? Yes.
Get it.
My question is, in Finland, and about when talking about the norms of Finnish, did the participants refer to any dictionaries, or what kind of sources they refer to if they want to kind of make their case?
Yes, especially the pedagogical language policy does refer to authoritative sources, namely Kotimaisten kielten keskus, which is the institution for the languages of Finland, which is the official by-law institution that upholds standard Finnish and standard Finnish norms. It has an online grammar book and dictionary that was often linked to when commenters argued among each other. So this is a good form. And some very old grammar books from Ean Setälä, who is a classic. Yes. Thank you.
So, and did you find also any differences how men and women engaged in this language policing? So,
yeah,
or not?
Yeah, unfortunately, I did not collect any social data from the participants because I might not be able to tell who is internet personalities are, as they are sort of unpredictable. And it was also for data purposes. Collecting information from thousands of commenters was not very possible in this regard.
Yes. But how Finns react to the corrections? Are they rather polite or not?
I would say it depends on a lot. In this group, people tended to thank others for correcting, because of course there is the standard is the standard, and people thank when they are corrected into the actual correct form. So here these corrections were accepted very well. In public, it tends to be depending on very much on the person themselves.
Yes. So, thank you, and.